A word of caution. This episode contains details of sexual assault, kidnapping, and murder. Please take care when listening. There is much to love about North and South Carolina, but the two states have also had their fair share of violent and senseless crimes over the years. From murders on the Blue Ridge Parkway, in the heart of big cities or sleepy college towns, and along the coastal waters, some of these stories may be new to you. Some may have happened in your town. Some may involve people that are still missing to this day. But all will leave you remembering to always be vigilant about the people you meet and the places you go. I'm Renee Robertson. Please join me for Missing in the Carolinas. Episode 135, The Crimes of Leroy Martin, the Gaffney Strangler. If you've driven along the I-85 corridor near Gaffney, South Carolina recently, you no doubt spotted a 135-foot tall water tower resembling a peach. This water tower, located about an hour outside of Charlotte, holds 1 million gallons of water and honors the town of Gaffney's history of peach farming. The town hosts an annual South Carolina Peach Festival each July, complete with a parade, beauty pageant, car shows, a mud bog, and more. Shoppers also enjoy the Gaffney Outlet Marketplace, with stores like Adidas, Michael Kors, and Kate Spade. Fans of the Netflix show House of Cards can find the fictional gravesite of the protagonist Frank Underwood in the city's Oakland Cemetery. History buffs visit the area to learn about two major Revolutionary War battles at Kings Mountain National Park and the Cowpens National Battlefield. The town has 3 certified historic districts, one featuring the log home and trading post of town founder Michael Gaffney, an Irish immigrant. The 3rd historic district features an 18-block residential neighborhood that showcases homes built during the turn of the century. In 1968, the town of Gaffney was much smaller, quieter, and in the midst of integrating Black students into schools that had been predominantly white up until that point. Lyndon B. Johnson was the President of the United States, and daily news headlines reported on the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. People in the community thought nothing of leaving their doors unlocked or traveling by foot to get from one place to another. In fact, many people preferred it. But in January of 1968, a teenage girl disappeared from Gaffney, and a few weeks later, so did a married woman out walking her dog. Someone was abducting women in broad daylight, and no one realized it right away because the boogeyman didn't really exist, right? But before we get to those abductions, I want to talk about what happened to Roger and Lucille Dedmond on May 19, 1967. On that evening, the couple traveled from their home in Spindale, North Carolina, crossing the state line into Gaffney for a night on the town. According to eyewitness accounts and testimony from Roger, they both became intoxicated over the course of the evening. They were seen fighting in a nightclub near Gaffney, South Carolina. But later that evening, Roger said they had resolved their argument and stopped at a roadside restaurant. He went inside to purchase some donuts and coffee, and when he returned, his wife was gone. As he later told police, he just thought his wife had walked off. She had done that before during their arguments. Roger went home, as they were parents of an infant son at the time. The next morning, Lucille Dedmond was found lying nude in Jerusalem Road in Union County, South Carolina. She had been strangled to death and sexually assaulted. Local police informed Roger that they had discovered his wife, and after he identified her body, they promptly arrested him for the crime. He later said the police had questioned him for more than 2 days, without a break, after his arrest. Roger said he was too drunk to remember exactly what happened, and denied murdering his wife. But police convinced him to sign a confession. After all, how else did his wife happen to end up dead within 12 hours of the couple being seen arguing? By the end of the year, on December 12, 1967, a jury found him guilty of manslaughter, largely based on the testimony of the police who questioned him. A judge sentenced Roger to 18 years in prison. But as it turned out, Roger Dedmond did not really murder his wife, and the man who did would eventually want credit for it. In the early months of 1968, 2 women went missing from Gaffney. The first was a 14-year-old teenager named Nancy Reinhardt. She went missing in late January by all accounts. She was visiting with her grandmother on Locust Street before saying she was going to a store in downtown Gaffney where her mother worked. She never arrived at the store. When her mother reached out to the police, they believed she was probably a runaway. But then, On February 7th, 20-year-old Nancy Paris left her home, where she lived with her husband's parents, to take her dog, a white poodle, out on a walk. They left around 3:30 p.m. but never made it back home. She was last seen around 3:45 p.m. at a cafe with her dog, where she got some change and made a call from a payphone. Police later believed she was calling a local pool hall where her husband, Monroe Paris, hung out, but he wasn't there and missed the call. When Monroe returned home from the establishment, he found no sign of his wife or the dog. He walked around the neighborhood searching for them, and later that evening, growing concerned, he contacted the police. He told them his wife was very cautious and wouldn't have accepted a ride from anyone, even someone she knew. Then, on February 9, 1968, Bill Gibbons, the managing editor of the Gaffney Ledger, received an anonymous phone call where a man confessed to murdering 2 women who had been reported missing. These women were Nancy Paris and Nancy Christine Reinhardt. The caller told Bill Gibbons to take out 3 different sheets of paper for 3 different stories he had to tell. The caller gave directions as to where the 2 Nancys' bodies could be found. In turn, Bill Gibbons immediately notified the police and gave that information to them. A few days later, on Monday, February 12th, the anonymous caller again contacted the newspaper editor and confessed to being involved in Lucille Dedmond's murder, the one where her husband had been convicted of murdering his wife. He gave detailed information about things that were in Lucille's pocketbook. On February 13th, 1968, 15-year-old honor student Opal Buxton was walking to the bus stop when she was unexpectedly abducted. Her 16-year-old sister, Gracie, was about 50 yards behind her at the time. Opal screamed, and Gracie saw a white male force her into the trunk of a car before driving away. She grabbed her brother, and the 2 ran back to their family's home to tell their parents what had happened. Back at the scene, they found one of Opal's shoes, a pile of her schoolbooks, and a scarf belonging to her. With this abduction, the caller showed that he had no preference over the race of his victims. While the 2 Nancys had been white, Opal was a black female, but all 3 women were slender and attractive. Bill Gibbons received yet another phone call. The caller told him, "This is the same man who called you before. We're going to have to do something about that man down yonder serving my sentence. I killed Mrs. Dedmond, just like I did Mrs. Paris and Reinhardt. I killed them with them begging me not to do it." He had more to say about Lucille Dedmond. He described what color and size shoes she was wearing when she died. He said she had a blue pocketbook in her possession, and in it was lipstick, a comb, a picture of a girl sitting on the back of a white Falcon, car keys, and a watch. Her dress was plain and simple, and she had no coat or stockings. He also described her underwear. He said he took her across county lines to Union County to cause confusion. The caller refused to name himself, saying police would have to shoot me like the dog I am. He wanted Roger Dedmond to be released from prison because he was an innocent man whose only crime was fighting with his wife in a bar before leaving her alone and vulnerable in their car while he shopped for provisions. This caller, who would later become known as the Gaffney Strangler, is not the first killer profiled on Missing in the Carolinas who liked to torment people by telephone. In 1985, Larry Eugene Bell kidnapped 2 young women from Lexington County, South Carolina, and then phoned their families with details of the abductions and where he had left their bodies. Police with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department also believe he was responsible for the disappearance of Sandy Cornett in 1984. You can learn more about Bell in episode 10. With the community becoming more fearful by the day after Opal Buxton's abduction, a professional golfer named Harry Transu and a store owner named Walter Price decided they would drive around and see if they could see any signs of the missing high schooler. When Walter Price had to leave the search, a former fire warden named Lester Skinner joined in. The 2 men were driving in a wooded area off Highway 11, north of Gaffney, when they spotted a suspicious car back down a dead-end road, with a man crouching down beside the car. When the 2 men turned their car down the road to investigate, the man jumped into his vehicle, a 1957 Chevrolet, and began driving away. Transu and Skinner followed the car down several different dirt roads, taking down the number of the license plate, just in case. Eventually, the man driving the Chevy drove into the yard of a nearby house and parked. The two citizens who had been following did not know if he was involved in anything nefarious, but they reported the car to the sheriff's office just in case. Officers went to the home where the two men had seen the Chevy park and knocked at the door. The man living there said yes, a mystery driver had stopped in his yard and asked if he sold beagles. The resident said, "No, I don't," and the driver left. Skinner and Transu led the police to the spot where they had seen the man crouched behind the Chevy. The officers could see visible signs of a struggle on the ground, a quarter, and tire tracks. Word quickly spread around town. An interesting brief titled Rumors in the February 27, 1968 edition of the Gaffney Ledger said this in part: "The people of Gaffney and Cherokee County fear a maniac killer, and many of them are armed. But unlike disasters of nature which tend to bring people together, a tragedy of this sort has just the opposite effect. A stranger is not greeted cordially until his business is known. Vicious and slanderous lie are whispered at bridge tables and even at church. Gaffneyites look at each other accusingly with no basis, except the liemongers from whom they heard rumors. Parents pick up their children at schools after a request by Sheriff Julian B. Wright. Earthquakes, fires, and floods bring people together, strangers and home folks. This terror is dividing the people." Slowly, people started realizing they may have information leading to the missing women. A postal employee named Jimmy Phillips mentioned to a coworker that he had seen a resident named Leroy Martin's car idling in front of his house several different mornings around 4:30 a.m. He had no reason to have been parked in that location. Lieutenant McKinnon with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, and the FBI agents he was working with began to quietly collect information about Martin, who worked at the Musgrove Cotton Mill. They checked to see if he had been on the job at the time of Opal's abduction. He was not. They put him under surveillance after they realized the license plate of his car matched the one Transu and Skinner had written down. Members of SLED and the FBI went back to the location where the two men had first spotted the car and did a more thorough search of the surrounding woods. There, they found the body of a black female, with marks around her throat and 2 stab wounds to her body. It was Opal Buxton. They arrested Leroy Martin at the mill shortly after. Outwardly, the man did not look like a violent rapist and killer. He had dark hair and a friendly smile. Residents were surprised after his arrest. They told the local media they knew him as a good mechanic who enjoyed tinkering with his car and always had it running like a watch. Even though Gaffney had stopped the boogeyman before it could kill anyone else, one man told the Herald, "It would be tragic if we let our guard down now. It happened here once, and it could happen again." On February 21st, the Herald ran an article stating Leroy Martin had tried to injure himself with a metal slat while incarcerated at the state penitentiary in Columbia. The warden said they had moved the inmate to another cell directly in front of the correctional officer's desk so they could observe him. In the same article, a Gaffney attorney named Jonathan McCown told the paper that it was only a matter of time before he would request a new trial for Roger Dedmond, who was serving an 18-year sentence in the murder of his wife, Lucille. On February 22nd, the bodies of Nancy Paris and Nancy Reinhart were found about 6 miles apart. Nancy Paris was found under a bridge on Old Ford Road, about 3 miles east of Gaffney. They were both nude and had died of strangulation. The body of Nancy Paris was also covered in cigarette burns. Nancy Reinhart was found in the woods off Changang Road, about 3 miles northwest of Gaffney. These were the exact locations the caller had told the managing editor of the newspaper about. Before we continue, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. I had been unhappy with my old podcast host for a while and was looking for other options. I discovered Riverside FM and learned that for one low monthly fee, it would help me record the podcast and utilize video capabilities. It uses AI technology to easily create clips from each episode that I can share on my social media accounts. I don't consider myself very tech savvy, but audio and video editing with Riverside FM software has been a breeze, and I actually look forward to recording days now. If you are looking for a company that will help you with all your podcasting, webinar, and video needs, I encourage you to check out Riverside FM. You won't be disappointed. I'll include a link for you in the show notes. There are a lot of trends floating around on social media on the best way to keep your skin looking hydrated and youthful. But I don't like to follow fads, especially when I find a product that works. Enter the products from SkinxErin. I use her pre-cleanse oil, hydrating beauty oil, and perfecting night oil, and I was hooked from the first drop. The pre-cleanse gently removes dirt, impurities, and even waterproof makeup without tugging, all without stripping or drying out your skin. In addition to keeping your skin clear, it helps your skin feel firmer and reduces the signs of aging. The hydrating beauty oil is a powerful and effective skin hydrator that never leaves your skin feeling greasy. The signature squalene oil is known for its anti-inflammatory and anti-aging properties. It's perfect for treating skin conditions like acne and eczema and reducing the appearance of wrinkles. The Perfecting Night Oil is loaded with vitamins E and A and is rich with antioxidants and omegas that nourish skin, replenish elasticity, and reduces stretch marks. A few drops a day leave skin smoother, more vibrant, and youthful. My skin instantly drinks in these oils, and I have never had a problem with them leaving residue on my clothes or sheets at night, only giving me a healthy glow that my husband often compliments me on. Want to try the products out for yourself? Go to shopxerin.com and use the code MissingCarolinas10 for a 10% discount on your order. And now, let's get back to the show. After his arrest, Leroy Martin led police all over Gaffney to show them where he had discarded clothing and other personal items from his victims. Opal Buxton's clothing, as well as a coat bearing her initials, were found in a well not far from where her body was discovered. In that well, police also found a billfold, 2 quilts, half of a black bra, a pair of stockings, a garter belt, a green skirt, slip underwear, a brown tasseled loafer, and a man's shirt and undershirt. Near the place where Nancy Paris was found, police found a wallet with her ID. Her purse and one of her shoes were located in the Concord section of Cherokee County. Sadly, they also found the remains of the poodle Nancy's husband said she'd taken for a walk on the day she was abducted. The victims had all been sexually assaulted and strangled with a belt-like device that likely came from the mill Leroy Martin worked at. In Cherokee County, they also found a broken necklace, a can, and a bottle opener with a ring attached to a miniature license plate, as well as some torn-up books with trading stamps, like the ones the anonymous caller said Lucille Dedmond had in her purse. In late February of 1968, the Herald reported that citizens in Cherokee County had started a fund to aid in funerals for the murder victims of the Gaffney Strangler. Olin Phillips, the chairman of the County Board of Registration, said the following: "There are 7 members in the Emanuel Buxton family, and their average income is a total of $60 weekly. The Reinhardt family is supported by the mother, who earns $1 an hour in a part-time job in a local store." This fund also included supporting members of Leroy Martin's family. Phillips said, "The Martin family lives in a small, weather-beaten frame house which has no plumbing facilities. The 3 children are all preschool age. The mother is unskilled and has never worked." After his arrest, Leroy Martin was sent to the state hospital in Columbia to undergo psychiatric evaluation. In early May of 1968, physicians at the hospital notified the court system in South Carolina that Martin had been diagnosed as not insane. Roger Dedmond was released from prison shortly after Martin was arrested. He went home to his son, who was then a toddler. All charges against him in the murder of his wife Lucille were officially dropped on February 29, 1968. In all, he had served 10 months in prison. Leroy Martin later admitted he had lured Lucille Dedmond into his taxi with an offer for a ride home while her husband had gone into the convenience store. Most of Leroy Martin's early life remains a mystery. A native of Gaffney, in 1957, he had been convicted of sexual assault and battery with intent to kill when he attacked a young girl in the woods. After serving time, he married, sometimes worked part-time as a cab driver, got a job at the textile mill, and had 3 sons. During one of his trials, a SLED agent revealed Martin had confessed to necrophilia, engaging in sexual acts with the deceased body of Nancy Reinhardt. Another cruel twist: her family reported Leroy Martin had attended their daughter's visitation after her body was discovered. He told them, "She sure is a pretty girl. I don't see how anybody could have done this to her." His cruelty had also escalated. When Nancy Paris's body was found, it was covered in cigarette burns. Leroy Martin pleaded guilty to the murders of 4 women and received 4 life sentences without parole. While incarcerated, he told his mother that he had a split personality and his violent half had committed the murders. He did not serve much of his time in prison, though, before a fellow prisoner decided to send him to an early grave. In 1972, Marshall Rumsey of Pickens, South Carolina, stabbed him in the chest and back in the Central Corrections Institute in Columbia, South Carolina. Martin died immediately. In 2009, the town of Gaffney, South Carolina was terrorized again by a string of violent murders. I'll share more in a future episode coming this summer. This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Missing in the Carolinas. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and give it a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you'd also like to support the show in a small way, you can buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com, Renee Robertson. Thank you so much for those who have already supported me through this platform. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so please like our pages and get started on a discussion of the missing people and crimes profiled on the show. Do you know of a missing persons case in North or South Carolina that you think should be covered? Email me at missinginthecarolinas@gmail.com with any details you can share. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Macintosh Multimedia. Sound editing is provided by Daniel Robertson. Thanks so much for listening.